everybody. As we're slowly getting people admitted, I'll give a couple other minutes, but I'm excited to talk to you guys today about your hormones. Is it really your hormones? I see a lot of different people on the call with me today. Some of you have done the program before, so that's exciting. Maybe you're rejoining to get a better understanding, and some people are brand new. So we'll have a question and answer section at the end. All right, 101 Pacific time, let's get started. So this seminar is all about, is it really your hormones, helping you discover the hidden metabolic traps that are keeping you tired, feeling frustrated, and oftentimes overweight. So let's get right into it. What we're going to be covering today is going to be really a better, deeper understanding of why you're feeling off and what your body is really trying to tell you. Second thing we're going to go over is we're going to go deep into the hormones and your metabolism and that connection on your lab work that your doctor really probably isn't explaining to you. If you do have past lab work in my chart or from your doctor, it's not a bad idea to pull it up, track it down, find the most recent one, because I'll be talking about specific lab work. It's fine if you don't have all the markers we're going to talk about, but if you do have some markers, it's going to help get a little bit more context. So take some time now, track those down, have them up when we're doing the webinar, and you'll be able to correlate your actual lab results with what I'm talking about. And then we're going to do some self-assessment. So even if you don't have the lab work, don't sweat it. If you've never done lab work, if you can't find it, then there's going to be some easy kind of self-assessment checklists that you'll be able to do to see if maybe your hormones are impacting how you're feeling and your weight loss. Okay, so who is this program for? We really, really like working with people ready for lifelong transformational change. I know our name is Skinny Seattle, maybe it's a little off-putting, but weight loss is really the positive spillover effect, and that's the last thing we want to do. We want to, of course, help you lose weight, but the first thing is to really find the root cause of why you're struggling with your weight loss. Okay, some people come into the program and they're feeling like they're eating clean already and they're at a plateau, or they've maybe reached a life stage where they're menopause and the weight loss is really hard to lose. You might be feeling a little tired, foggy, moody. You're not, getting the energy you need even after a good night's sleep, or maybe some of you aren't even sleeping well at all. A lot of people are going to come to us because they've got those intense sugar cravings. Now, that's not necessarily a willpower thing. That usually is a sign that there's some metabolic dysregulation. Bloating is going to be a sign of GI, lack of libido, or poor sleep. Those are all potentially adrenal and cortisol imbalances. And the other thing is, we can't fix what we don't know, right? Unless we're testing, we're guessing. So if you're tired of the fads and the trends and the one size fits all things, this really helps to take a lot of the guesswork out of why you can't lose weight, how to lose weight, and it gets people feeling really in control, right? Our goal is to teach lifestyle, not just a fad or a trend or a gimmick, right? So one very common question I get is, Dr. Mary, what's your background? How did you get into this? Why are you qualified to help? Well, it's really interesting. I did my bachelor's in exercise science kinesiology. So I have a very extensive background in exercise, kinesiology, how the body works. And then I went on to get my graduate degree in chiropractic. I had a couple busy offices downtown Seattle for quite a while, and I noticed my patients were getting better, but they still weren't fully getting fixed. Okay, so I realized the root cause wasn't just pinched nerves or bone on nerve. A lot of that was inflammation. And so when I finally found the root cause of the inflammation, which ended up a lot of times being diet and hormones, it was wonderful. Their pain resolved, their energy improved, and then the other cool thing is they started losing weight. So who doesn't love that? I'm very fortunate. I feel very lucky. I have like one of the best jobs ever. I truly get to change people's lives. That led me to functional medicine, and functional medicine is really what this is: hormonal and metabolic imbalance, finding the root cause. So I still see a couple chiropractic patients every week, but to be honest, this takes up most of my time now, helping people improve their hormones and the metabolism, and I love it. I'm fortunate to have that opportunity to do that. Okay. So let's talk about one of the very common myths that people face when they're trying to lose weight. Okay. It is not a calorie in, calorie out equation. It's not just eat less and move more. That is very antiquated information and it does not work. Okay. I know at one point we were teaching everybody that calories counted all the same, but there is no way you cannot eat 1,000 calories of rice cakes or count points, 0 points, and feel as satisfied and have as good of a metabolism as 1,000 calories of lean protein or chicken breast or veggies. Okay, so it's not an eat less, move more. And the body stores fat for a reason. It's often in a hormonal imbalance. It's often an inflammatory response. Another really common thing I get is people have this mental, psychological idea that they can just willpower their way through it. And when they don't succeed at that, then it's something wrong with them, right? But physiologically, cravings for salt, cravings for sweet, intense fatigue, those are all actually physiological symptoms that could be going on. So it's really, really hard to just willpower your way through that. We need to understand what's going on with the root, why that's happening from a physiological response, not just a willpower your way, I want more energy or I don't want to eat sugars. Okay, so we'll explain all that here in a few minutes, because now is a great time to get your labs out if you have them. We're going to go over the 4 root causes that oftentimes I will find with people's hormonal and metabolic imbalances. So the self-assessment, the lab works, these all come into play here. And the very first thing we're going to talk about is how to tell if you suspect, or maybe you have some thyroid metabolic dysregulation. So think of it this way here. As I'm reading out these symptoms, think if you have them sometimes, if you have them all the times, or if you have them never. Okay. If you're never having any symptoms, you likely don't fall into that category. But if sometimes and always you feel like you're having the symptoms, then we want to take a deeper look to see what's going on with that different metabolic area. Okay. So if you're feeling tired and sluggish, if you have cold feet, cold hands, or that cold feeling all over, if you feel like you need a whole bunch of sleep, like excess sleep in order to function properly, and if you feel like even though you're on a low calorie diet, it's really hard for you to lose the weight, and sometimes you're even feeling like on a low calorie diet, you're gaining weight, those are all signs there could be some thyroid metabolic dysregulation. Now, let me explain. Most routine lab work, your doctor, your primary care is doing nothing wrong or lackluster. They're typically just checking that very first step in thyroid metabolic dysregulation. There's actually 24 steps. Okay, so let me give a little bit more of an explanation here. Have a picture. Okay, so you guys can all see me. So your pituitary gland controls your thyroid. It controls your thyroid with a hormone called thyroid stimulating hormone. This is often what gets tested, right? So we need to think of your TSH as voice volume. If you have a high TSH, that means your pituitary gland is really talking very loudly to your thyroid. That means your thyroid's probably not working. That's a problem, okay? But here's what usually happens on lab tests. Your TSH comes back normal, right? And when your TSH comes back normal, then your doctor's like, everything's okay with you, nothing to see here. The problem is, if TSH is the only lab work you're doing, it doesn't tell us what's going on with the thyroid hormones. Your thyroid produces 2 really important hormones. It produces T4 and T3. And those are the hormones we really want to get a better understanding of. So, big picture, we need to think of your metabolism and your hormones as a chain reaction that happens throughout your body, right? So hormones are going to be like the key to unlock the metabolic door. Sometimes what happens is you're just missing the hormones, right? And that's a problem. That's what we often find in the thyroid dysfunction. So When we're looking at your thyroid here, really the numbers that matter the most are going to be your T4 and T3. Now, your body produces way more T4 than it does T3. The cool thing is we can convert T4 to T3. 20% happens in the GI tract, 60% happens in the liver. And then once that conversion happens, it hops into a little binding globulin. I call those like your T3 Ubers, drives around the body, and then releases as something called free T3, right? So when you're looking at your thyroid lab markers, and if you suspect you have thyroid dysfunction, share my screen again here, that's really the marker that you're going to want to see. The free T3 and T4. If you're just seeing TSH, then we might want to do, and you're having symptoms, we might want to do more of a deep dive and really understand what's happening with the thyroid. Now, another major root cause of weight gain, difficulty losing weight, slow metabolisms, I see is people having blood sugar imbalances, right? Your blood sugar can either be super high or super low. Sometimes it's both, right? I will oftentimes see really high blood sugar in people. That's insulin resistance, prediabetes, even type 2 diabetes. And sometimes I'll see people feeling really low. Low blood sugar is going to be reactive hypoglycemic, right? Sometimes even people will be low enough where they are hypoglycemic. So if you're looking at your labs, there's a couple different markers that you're going to want to look for, right? One, and a very common one people do is a glucose test. You do not want to see your glucose above 99 or below 70, okay? By the way, that should be fasting glucose. So we don't want to see your glucose go above 99. Signs potentially that your glucose, give you my screen here, we don't want to see your glucose go above 99 or below 70. Signs potentially your blood sugar goes too high are going to be if you get that fatigue after meals, okay? That's a very common physiological sign that you have high blood sugar. If you eat something and you get a little sleepy after. Other signs that you potentially have high blood sugar throughout the day are going to be sweet cravings after meals, okay? If you eat something, you feel very satisfied with what you eat, maybe even full, but then your brain is like, I got to eat something sweet. That's a sign potentially your blood sugar gets too high. Another sign that you potentially have high blood sugar and it's going above where we want to see it is because you might have frequent urination and thirst. You feel like you're never satiated, you're always drinking water, and then always feeling like you have to go to the bathroom, okay? So let me break that down for you really quick without getting too far into the weeds. We need to think of your blood sugar here as the main energy source for your brain, your heart, and your lungs. So these are representing red blood cells, okay? And your red blood cells go through your arteries and your veins. Their job is to carry oxygen, the air you breathe, and glucose, the food you eat, and then transport them to the mitochondria of the cell, make cellular ATP. All that's less important. More important is how your cute little red blood cells actually get glucose inside them. Okay, so here's high blood sugar. You eat something, and that glucose, or that what you eat, gets broken down in the digestive tract into glucose molecules. So you're eating a piece of pizza, a sugar, breakfast, whatever it is. And in your tummy, in your intestines, it gets broken down into glucose molecules. All by themselves, the glucose molecules get to cross over into your bloodstream. It's a pretty great trick, okay? Now, what the glucose molecules cannot do by themselves is get inside the red blood cell. They need some help, okay? So your body senses glucose in the bloodstream. It signals to an organ called your pancreas. Your pancreas then releases this cute little hormone. Insulin's another hormone. And insulin has a VIP parking spot right on the red blood cell. Only when insulin parks on that red blood cell, the back doors of your truck open up and glucose gets inside, okay? That's a fully functioning, fast metabolism. That's the gold star. That's what we want to help people get to. Here's the problem that we find with a lot of people that have high blood sugar. Your cute little red blood cells are putting up orange cones and barricades for insulin's parking spot. Insulin resistance, prediabetes, type 2 diabetes. That's what we call that, okay? And when those cute little red blood cells stop getting insulin in them and glucose can't get inside, then the glucose backs up into your bloodstream. High blood sugar, okay? Now that excess glucose in your bloodstream does two things, and we don't like either one of them. One, excess glucose converts to fats. That's lame. We don't like that. This is what we're trying to prevent and even reverse, okay? Now there's 4 types of fat on the body. You've got adipose tissue, that's fat around your midsection. You have visceral fat, that's scary fat around your midsection or your internal organs. Triglycerides are essentially fat in the blood, and high cholesterol is essentially fat accumulation on the walls of the arteries and the veins. So we're talking here, right, about so much more than just weight loss. If you're looking at your cholesterol and your triglyceride markers and those are high, there's a very strong chance you're insulin resistant, okay? So we want to go ahead and reverse all of those high blood sugar signs. We want to make these cute little red blood cells accept more insulin, be less insulin resistant, so more glucose can get inside the red blood cell, and then you're going to have a faster metabolism. And then the beautiful thing with that is the weight loss is the positive spillover effect. Okay. I had the fortune of talking to a patient that's done the program, but we just did her post labs. She brought her A1C, which is the 90-day marker of how much extra glucose is in your tissue. She was at prediabetes, and over the course of since February to she just did her relapse in the beginning of August, she's reversed her prediabetes and she lost 45 pounds. But that was a positive spillover effect. Ideally, lowering cholesterol and getting rid of and decreasing blood sugar was like the very good thing, the best thing. Okay, so we talked about thyroid. We're talking about a lot of big picture things here. And don't worry, we're going to help you encode them. Talked about the thyroid, having your thyroid functioning. We talked about the impact of having high blood sugar. That's excess glucose, insulin resistance, causing fat gain, prediabetes, and type 2 diabetes. The other thing we really need to consider is sometimes people have low blood sugar, okay? Low blood sugar can happen when you're reactive hypoglycemic, and the signs of low blood sugar that you might have low blood sugar throughout the day are going to be shaky, lightheaded, irritable if you miss a meal, kind of that hangry feeling. Eating relieves fatigue. So when you eat something, it gives you energy. By the way, food should not give you energy and it should not make you tired. Think of food as just fuel, gas in your car. If your car is low in gas and you stop into the gas station and fill it up with gas, it doesn't necessarily make it go faster. And if you're low gas, your car's not going slower, right? So food is just gas in the car. It should just keep you going. So we don't want our food to either give us energy or make us tired and fatigued. That's a sign of dysregulation, okay? The other hallmark sign of somebody that has potentially low blood sugar throughout the day is going to be sweet cravings throughout the day, okay? When your brain, your heart, and your lungs aren't getting the glucose that it needs to make ATP in a fast metabolism, your body is going to crave the sugar, right? So it's very, very common. We'll see patients with intense sugar cravings for sweets after meals and throughout the day. And the root cause of that is blood sugar imbalance. Their blood sugar is either going really low or going really high. Okay. Now, here's an interesting thing. We're getting a whole bunch of new data and studies because of blood sugar monitoring. So oftentimes we'll find that when people have super high blood sugar and it crashes really low, usually we'll see this overnight, right? That big, huge spike and drop in blood sugar causes damage to the hippocampus. Your hippocampus is responsible for short-term memory. So if you've been noticing a little bit more frequently, the brain fog, why did I walk into this room? Where did I put my car keys? What was my coworker that I worked with for 10 years? What was their name? Those aren't necessarily signs that you're just getting older. Those are signs, potentially there's blood sugar dysregulation. And the positive thing is we can actually reverse that and help get rid of that brain fog, okay? Mayo Clinic is actually starting to call Alzheimer's and dementia type 3 diabetes. So we don't want anybody to have, long-term Alzheimer's and diabetes if we can prevent it at a younger age, okay? So we talked about thyroid. We talked in detail about blood sugar. Now, the negative spillover effect of dysregulated blood sugar is going to be, it's a lot of stress and strain on your adrenal glands, okay? And it's going to impact your cortisol levels. Usually when my patients come to me and say, I've gained a lot of weight, there was a stressful event or a big hormonal change, they'll notice that a lot of the weight gain is around their midsection. That tends to be a cortisol dysregulation and an adrenal dysfunction, okay? Now, lots of labs aren't going to test that, and it's super important to understand how those impact your weight loss. And so we'll go into it a little bit here very quickly. Now, cortisol hormone does 4 really important things, okay? Cortisol hormone is going to help you regulate your blood sugar between your meals and while you're sleeping. So big picture, let's kind of think about that for just a quick second, okay? If you eat a couple times a day, that glucose gets into your blood, breaks down, and either does something we need it to do, going to the brain, heart, and lungs, or converts to fat, which we don't want it to do. But the other 16, 17 hours a day, and all through the night, you go to sleep for 6 to 8 hours, and you're not waking up in the middle of the night to have a sandwich, your body has to have a backup plan. So that's where cortisol comes in. Cortisol then goes to knock on the door of your liver and your muscles. Your liver and your muscles have something called glycogen. That gets released, saves the day, brain, heart, and lungs are happy, okay? Here's the problem. Cortisol is not an unlimited hormone. We don't just get loads and loads of cortisol per day. We get a specific amount, and your body, in a perfect ideal situation, regulates your cortisol. But oftentimes we have imbalance with that cortisol chaos, right? And so you don't have enough cortisol to do the 3 other really important things. The second important thing is to help manage inflammation, right? So if you have cortisol imbalance, oftentimes my patients will say they feel very inflamed. They'll have joint pain and stiffness. They'll feel a lot of the bloat. They're gonna have, even some GI dysregulation. That inflammation in cortisol is really important to help manage that. Now, the third super duper important role of cortisol is to help you manage a word I know probably you haven't heard of before. I tease my patients, right? It's to manage stress. Who doesn't have a stressful day, time, life, okay? So cortisol's job is to help us manage our stress throughout the day. The fourth super duper important role for cortisol is to give you stable energy. So if you're noticing throughout the day those energy crashes, that could be a cortisol imbalance, right? You should have high energy all throughout the day. Now, here's the thing with cortisol. Like I said, it's a super important hormone produced by your adrenal glands, and you only get a certain amount per day. So when you wake up, it's the highest it should be, right? So we're going to pretend you get 100 cortisol units. Ideally, you're spending 25, 25, 25, 25. But here's what we see with a lot of times with our patients. If you have blood sugar challenges, you might be using 45, 50 of your cortisol units just to regulate blood sugar. If you have a lot of inflammation, you have joint pain, bloating, stiffness, fatigue, all those are signs of inflammation. If you have a lot of stress going on, if you're low in energy, then you're using more cortisol from throughout the day than your body actually produces. Okay. Now, it's your brain, your heart, and your lungs backup plan. So we got to borrow it from somewhere. So what happens is 2, 3 p.m. maybe, or 2, 3 a.m., your brain, your heart, and your lungs are needing that glucose cortisol. It's not there. So you start to borrow then from the sex hormone supply. And guess what happens to all our lovely patients that are perimenopausal, going through menopause, or postmenopausal? You start to notice you get that slow increase in weight gain because you're borrowing from a sex hormone supply that you're not even fully getting anymore. Okay, so it becomes a big problem. That's why we see a lot of postmenopausal women, perimenopausal women, or women going through menopause notice things drastically changed as soon as you hit that metabolic and hormonal shift. Okay, now adding on to that, if you're waking up at 2, 3 in the morning and you just can't go back to sleep, what's happening there is you're probably releasing through your adrenal glands adrenaline. And what do you think happens to my patients that release a big adrenaline release at 2, 3 in the morning? You're wide awake and you can't sleep. And of course, then you're starting to think about all the stressful things, right? So self-assessment here for people, if we're suspecting there might be some adrenal imbalance. There's a lot of them, so I'm going to go kind of slow. You're going to have difficulty staying asleep throughout the entire night, right? Maybe you're waking up 2, 3 in the morning and just can't go back to bed. The witching hour, some of my patients call that. Maybe you're waking up a couple times throughout the night to go to the bathroom, but then you're able to go back to bed. Either way, ideally, you're sleeping from when you go to bed to when you wake up without being interrupted. Other signs there's adrenal imbalance are going to be the salty cravings. So we already talked about sweet cravings. That's a blood sugar dysregulation symptom. Salty cravings are going to be adrenal dysregulation symptom. Other adrenal signs are going to be that slow starter in the morning and hard to fall asleep at night. So I like to call that and explain that as something called you're tired and you're wired. The tired and wired means you wake up in the morning and you just feel so exhausted, hard to get out of bed, you need coffee to get you going, and you keep telling yourself, oh, I'm so tired, I'm gonna go to bed so early tonight, and then guess what happens when it's time to go to bed? You're wide awake, it's really hard to fall asleep, and then that cycle continues. So those are all big signs of adrenal dysregulation. Lots of sweating, that could be adrenal dysregulation, lots of stress, and also even importantly, along with the lots of stress, it just feels like the little things can be very overwhelming. That's a sign that you're having trouble with stress management. Okay. Lack of libido, I'll see that in ED in some of my male patients. And for females, right, menopause, like I talked about, is a big shift. But if you are not close to the menopause, sometimes we'll see people not even having regular periods, regular cycles. Okay. Now, we're talking about a lot. You guys are doing a great job hanging with me. One more super important thing to talk about that's one of the primary causes of hormonal weight gain, and that's your GI, right? We cannot expect your body to help you lose weight in any sustainable way if you have gut dysregulation, right? So signs that there's some GI imbalance and your gut microbiome is off is going to be if you have heartburn or you're using antacids. Some of my patients are on 2 omeprazoles a day, and that's not great. That's a big sign if you're on any omeprazole, any sort of antacid, or you have heartburn. And they often say, well, it's just with foods I eat. Well, yeah, that's a sign that what you're eating is not agreeing with you, and there's some GI dysregulation. So ideally, you should not have any heartburn with any foods and not have to be on any antacids. Okay, other signs that there might be some gut microbiome and GI dysregulation, if you have that belching, if you feel like you're burping, or you get bloat. Other signs of GI dysregulation are going to be diarrhea and or constipation. Some people, the only thing regular about them is that they're consistently irregular. Okay, so if you have exclusively diarrhea or exclusively constipation, that's bad. And a lot of times people will get both. So all signs that we need to look into the GI tract and get your gut some support. Right. So I hope everybody at this point has gotten a better idea of maybe what is causing their metabolic and hormonal roadblocks. Oftentimes I'll see more than one, right? And so don't be surprised if you're like, oh yeah, that really sounded like me with the thyroid, blood sugar, adrenals, digestion. That's very common and very normal. So that all brings us to what we're all wondering. What the heck does that mean, right? There's two types of metabolisms in the world, two types of people in the world. People that have a fat-burning metabolism, and you probably know them, you're probably thinking about them, thinking, wow, why don't I have one of those, okay? And then everybody else. So we've got the fat burners, and then everybody else's. Everybody else is gonna be type 1, the slow, your food for fuel, fat storing, you've got cravings, and you've got low energy. Fat burning metabolisms are going to be super high energy and stable moods. So let me explain a little bit more specifically. And I like to use an analogy when I'm talking about this with people, right? So each type of metabolism, type 1 and type 2, is getting a bank account. $2,000 if you're food for fuel. If you have a fat burning metabolism, you get more money, $40,000. Now we're not talking about dollars. Your body's form of currency is calories. So here's what I mean. 2,000 calories per day, standard American diet. This is eat to live. You're requiring food for fuel. You're waking up to have breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks in between, probably snacks till you go to bed. If you had a fat burning metabolism, that would mean you'd have up to 40,000 calories to burn from stored fat as a fuel source. You are burning your fat, not storing it, right? So the 3 hallmark signs that you have a fat burning metabolism, or when you get to become a fat burner, this is what you can look forward to. It's sustained energy of 7 to 8 with only 1 caffeinated beverage per day. That's a good thing. We want to have not a lot of caffeine and super high energy. That's how we stabilize your adrenal glands. The second hallmark sign is you're not craving the sweets, the salty, the starchy, the carbs, or feeling like you have to graze a lot throughout the day, okay? And the third hallmark sign of somebody that truly has a fat-burning metabolism, that's what we want to get you to, is you have an easier time losing weight. You eat a few more salads, walk around the block a few more times, and frankly, we probably wouldn't even be in this webinar, right? The other thing, people that have a fat-burning metabolism, you'll never hear them say is, I just look at that food and I think I gain weight, right? It just doesn't happen because you're burning stored fat. Now, there's a good chance that you are not resonating with this. You do not have a fat-burning metabolism, and that's okay because we can get you there, right? But right now, it's important to understand that you have a food for fuel metabolism. That means it's eat to live, 2,000 calories per day, standard American diet. Now, here's the thing that's important for you to understand physiologically, why it's so much more than just willpower. If you are stuck in a food for fuel metabolism, okay, and you have a physically or emotionally exhausting day, your body is just naturally going to seek those quick recovery foods to help you get by. The sweets, the salty, the starchy, the carby, right? Whatever it is. That's because your brain, your heart, and your lungs physiologically need those things to be working. Remember my picture of the glucose before, okay? Now, I know there's a lot of weird advice out there on diets. Probably heard them all, tried it, maybe, who knows, right? Anyway, My point with that is a lot of the antiquated dietary advice says it's easy to lose weight. All you need to do is eat less and move more. The problem is if you are stuck in a food for fuel metabolism and all you're trying to do is eat less and move more, usually it just makes you more tired and more hungry, right? So we don't want to do that. That's silly because that equation eventually is just not going to work. If people are successful with that type of approach, just eating less and moving more, usually this is what happens. They'll lose the weight, but then those pounds come back with some uninvited guests. We don't want that either. We don't want the yo-yo back and forth for people. We want them to become fat burners and achieve that lifelong sustainable results. So the big question, how do we get you to become a more faithful and dependable fat burner? And we can do that, right? First step is really helping us understand and identify what's preventing you from being a fat burner in the first place. Okay, so let me switch back here. So we've got our two metabolisms. Now let's talk about how to fix it. Okay, so the first step is going to be that comprehensive metabolic lab testing. We do a 64 panel marker. Your primary care has done nothing wrong or lackluster. If they're doing less, they're just not trained to look at it in the lens that we are. Okay, so we really want to do a deep dive, see what's going on with your thyroid, see how your blood sugar is impacting, see your adrenal glands, see your digestion, see how all of those things are impacting you and preventing you from becoming a true fat burner. The next thing we're going to do is provide you some really good supplements to help support that. Okay, the supplements aren't necessary if you're going to try and do this on their own. It just helps to support. Okay, think of them like if you sprained your ankle, it's like having crutches. It's just going to help get you there a little quicker. Now, the cool thing about the supplements is that they are all natural. They don't have hormones, appetite suppressants, and they're not a lifelong medication, right? They're just meant to boost and support until you're a fat burner. And then when your body's back to fat burning again, you're not going to need them, okay? The next thing we need to do is really teach you and train you how to have a super fast fat burning metabolism. So picture this, picture that your metabolism is a burning hot campfire, except right now, you might be feeling a little bit more like smoldering ash. We can't just start that campfire with big, huge logs. We have to start with kindling and paper, okay? So the first phase of the program we like to teach people is how to get their metabolic campfire going, right? So for 30 to 40 days, you're gonna be eating kindling and paper, metaphorically speaking, of course. In reality, aim for 3 servings of protein a day, beef, turkey, chicken, seafood, and eggs, 3 servings of veggies a day, anything but corn and potatoes, and 2 servings of fruit. Fruit's going to be measured based on fruit sugar. During that time, you should anticipate to lose about maybe 8 to 10% of your body weight very quickly. And that's because you are now getting your body to become a more faithful and dependable fat burner. It's burning stored fat instead of depending on the food you're eating as a fuel source. So that's also, that very first important phase is important in weight loss. Okay, now I just gave you a big picture overview. There's a lot of ins and outs with that too, but that's going to get you pretty far. Proteins, veggies, healthy fats. If you're working with us, we're going to work with you one-on-one and really just hand you the blueprints, give you the guidelines, make it clear and simple for what to eat to lose weight. Super important to know, just because something is marketed as healthy or good for you doesn't mean it necessarily supports a weight loss goal. So we're going to iron out those details for you, okay? The second phase of the program in building your campfire and getting you to become a more faithful and dependable fat burner, okay, is going to be what we call the reset phase. This is where you want to reset your basal metabolic set point. So we need to add back in foods that are going to be a little bit more suitable for weight maintenance. And the second phase is where we add back in just a little bit more intense exercise. 8 to 12 minutes is minimum, okay? We don't need to exercise for weight loss, but we do want to exercise to have a strong, healthy heart and more muscle mass. The more muscle mass we have, the easier it is to regulate our blood sugar, and the stronger the heart we have, the longer we're going to live, okay? But it's super important to understand that if you're stuck in a food for fuel and you do a lot of intense exercise, it probably is just going to make you more tired and more hungry. Okay. Maybe you've done this before where you've set a goal. It's, August 1st, and you're thinking, I'm going to work out every day and I'm going to eat really well. You're not going to weigh yourself. And the week goes by and you do those things and you step on the scale and you haven't lost any weight, or maybe you're a little bit more. It's a likely sign then that you're in a food for fuel metabolism and you have adrenal dysregulation. We need to balance your adrenal glands before we start that intense exercise, because exercise is just a stressor. But in the second phase, when your metabolic campfire is burning super hot, then we get to add exercise 8 to 12 minutes every other day. And that's like stoking the metabolic campfire. Now, the third phase of the program, I like to call the cheesecake and pizza phase. And this can be anywhere from 2 weeks to kind of the rest of your life, right? Because the cheesecake and pizza isn't exclusively cheesecake and pizza. It's in moderation and according to your body's rules. I don't get to set the rules for anybody's body. If my mind could set the rules for your body or even my body, I'd be eating cake and pizza every day of the week and, be a billionaire because I'd have a cheesecake and pizza diet. But I don't get to set the rules, right? But we have to know we don't want to eliminate entire food groups for the rest of your life. What we have to teach you is it causing an inflammatory response or not? Food is not good or bad. It's consequential. It's inflammatory or it's not inflammatory. And that's really going to depend on your own body. Okay. Now, the beautiful thing about this program in the process, whether you're working with us or you're doing it on your own, is that it's a wash, rinse, and repeat. There's no gimmicks or trends or fads or prepackaged foods that you have to do from an envelope or a package, right? This is just eating real life foods for the rest of your life. So if you need to lose weight, you go back into that first phase for 30 to 40 days, the reduce phase. Second phase, if you just want to maintain your weight and you'll maintain forever. And if you're going on vacation, having a celebration, a party event, then you go right back into the food for fuel, food for fun phase, right? So it's pretty simple, black and white. We try and just make you aware that you can have, right, that once you're in that fat burning metabolism, it becomes very easy to maintain. Okay, so we are almost to the good part where we get to talk about case studies and answer some questions. You guys are doing great. We've covered a lot of high level things. And so let's talk here. Case examples. I touched base on this earlier, but I'm so excited just to share this with you because I was talking to a patient doing her post follow-up labs this morning. And yeah, very good. We're proud of her. She lost 45 pounds since she started in February. Just kidding, that's really good. But more importantly, she reversed her type 2 diabetes. Her blood sugar was high in prediabetes, and now she's in a normal range. Her cholesterol went down significantly. Her blood pressure went down. She has more energy, less cravings, and just feeling great. So a good fine case example of weight loss being the positive spillover effect once we improve your hormones and your metabolism. Okay, so you guys have to have questions for me at this point, maybe about labs, about how the process might work, if you're doing it on your own or working with us. Go ahead and unmute yourself and you can ask a question if you feel comfortable with that. Otherwise, you can just drop a question into the chat box and I will be happy to answer as many questions as I can until our time is up, which is coming up shortly. Anyone have questions for me? Okay, so I guess, Kimberly, I'm not seeing questions. Tell me if I'm missing any. Otherwise, I'm going to take that as a good sign that I did a wonderful job explaining to you guys what was going on potentially with your hormones, how you could potentially identify to see where you might have some hormonal imbalance, and then hopefully a better understanding of how to fix it.
Yeah, I think actually I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
I have a friend in her 20s, and we both had a conversation about this as far as taking birth control and what that's looked like. And since she's on the pill. The last 2 years she's been on it, she just keeps seeing an increase in weight gain. And even though she feels like she's doing all the right things, she still sees this. So I was just curious what you think are the effects of birth control on weight gain and how much that affects it.
Yeah, certainly. That could be a hormonal dysregulation. That goes back to, let me find my drawing here, right? That cortisol. And if you are having those sex hormones, hormone replacement therapy is what we would call that, artificially in your body, right? It might be causing an imbalance in your adrenal glands. And then also what usually I'll see then is a lot of times comes back to blood sugar imbalance. So it's a really good question. That is a good sign of hormonal weight gain, right? Now, the thing I would recommend to your friend is going to be to try and do as much as she can to clean up the diet and decreasing as much inflammation as she can, because if she wants to stay on the birth control, that might be something we can't control, right? Those hormone replacement therapy. But what we can control is how much inflammation is getting are blocking the red blood cells, right? So every single cellular process in your body needs a hormone to turn it on and turn it off. Your eye cells have a different hormone than your stomach cells. Stomach cells have a different hormone than your eye cells to work, if I said that right. Okay. So what happens and what can happen is you might have the hormones or too many hormones, and that's not the problem. What might be happening is you actually have gum in the locks. So I think of like your hormones being the key, and then your body able to unlock your hormones entering, and then the key unlocks the door. But what could happen is you have all the hormones, you just have gum in the locks and the doors don't open, right? And so there's a lot of nuances with that. Could be, maybe the hormones aren't functioning properly. It could be a lot of inflammation blocking those cells, so you're not getting that glucose inside them. And so that would be my suggestion. Get rid of the inflammation. Okay, I think I saw some other questions pop up here. How do you get started and what would be the next steps? Great question. Okay, so certainly if you wanted to have a conversation with me, that would be ideal. We do 15-minute discovery calls just to see if you're a good fit. We work with a limited number of people every month, just so we can keep it very small and one-on-one. We do custom coaching and support. Going over the lab work and everything like that takes a lot of time and energy and effort. So we don't like to just have lots of people on the program every month. So the best thing is going to be to do a discovery call, see if you would be a good fit. You and I will talk about your goals, understand, maybe what's going on a little bit more with your hormones and how it can help. The other option is you can do a full consult. Full consults are an hour. You'll fill out a little bit more intense paperwork for me. And then as soon as we get that paperwork filled out, you and I will have a time to talk, and then we can get a lot more of a deep dive into where your hormonal metabolic roadblocks might be. Great question. Anyone else? Okay, well, I think that wraps up. There is a link in the chat. If you guys do want to book a consult, really see what's going on, there's no obligation to continue. It's just going to give you a little bit better understanding. Thank you, Christine. It's going to give you a little bit better understanding of what we do, how we do things, give a chance to talk. And I'm looking forward to talking with each one of you and helping you understand how your metabolism is working and hormones are working and how we can help. All right. Bye, guys. Have a great day.